Is Florida State really out of the Zaquan Patterson recruitment?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime app. You can check it out. It's going to help you get tickets, comedy, etc. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get your first purchase $20 off. Gametime. Yeah, today's show is a little bit different, even though it is recruiting. We're going to talk about Zaquan Patterson's decision to attend Miami, at least verbally, he said so. Why it happened, the lead up to it, what really goes into his decision, and the overreaching thought about recruiting today in general. It's not NIL, hint. And also what's to come and why Florida State is still in this recruitment. So it's a long bit, and there's no way to get all this in even two segments. You got to listen to all three to kind of get this. This is a unique one, but it's a very important one because it's going to set you up for other things that I talk about, not only for this recruiting cycle, for years to come, because we are in the NIL era, but we are in a more important one, and that is the relationship era. So let's just talk about that. Why did he pick the University of Miami, and why did that happen? Even though leading up to it, straight to the point, I had heard Florida State for quite a while, and maybe even Auburn number 2. Why Miami? Well, here's the deal. At the end of the day, like, this polo is a nice shirt, and a lot of them will have a logo on it. And fans want to think that kids pick the logo. In today's era, that is not the case. Maybe long ago, not now. Even if their dad played at a school, played for the Gators, played for the Noles, whatever, they're going to pick the coach far more often than the school. There's a rare occasion here or there. The vast majority of the time, it's about relationships and the coaches that represent a school, period. With that, the two schools that did the best to date, from what I know, and I know Zaquan, people around his recruitment, and other people in the industry, they will probably tell you the same. It's a little different off the record with our conversations and what we announced publicly, but Florida State and Miami staffs did a tremendous job of recruiting him. Norvell, Cristobal, their entire staffs, to get a 5-star recruit, and he's ranked number 14 in the country by rivals, the number 2 safety, and the number 4 player in the state of Florida. Obviously, he's pretty good. You're not going to just get him based on a great visit, NIL, etc. He has all those options across the board. NIL is important. I'll get into that in a minute. Relationships. Zaquan Patterson was heavily scouted and recruited by numerous programs for a long time. I saw him spring of junior year, knew he was good. When I saw him in the fall, I'm like, man, he got bigger. Then I saw him again in January. I'm like, holy cow. He's like 198, 196, something like that right now. He's put together. And yesterday on live TV on ESPN, he announced for Miami while Chaminade was playing against St. Francis in Maryland. Great game, by the way. It was fun to watch. But is that really the end of it? Number one, and the answer is no. Number two, how can Florida State get back in? We'll discuss that and why all this culminated so quickly. So here's the big thing. His head coach wanted him to make a decision so Chaminade can kind of focus on winning another state title. That is the man's job. I have no problem with that. That does not mean that Zaquan Patterson is done with his recruitment. Again, he is not. You're going to hear me say this about 10 times. He is not. He's still going to take some visits. I will be floored if Florida State is not one of them. Auburn, Ohio State, and Michigan, besides Miami, where he obviously committed, are the other options. That can change too. You never know. Look for Patterson to take a trip to Tallahassee at some point this fall. That is my personal inclination. I have not asked Zaquan that. I have not even called anybody, nothing else. That is 100% based on intel prior to him announcing for Miami what I expect. I'll see him at some point this season and just ask him what's going on, whether I can announce it, etc. He may want to keep everything close to the vest at this point. I have no idea. But there's no reason from the intel that I've received from numerous people that Zaquan Patterson will not end up taking an official visit, unofficial visit, whatever he's got left to Tallahassee. He really likes Mike Norvell and his staff. That I know flat out. So, a real quick point here before I get into segment 2 and all of that, and this is at the culmination point. Relationships are number one. But many people out there, Noles fans, some of them, to be specific, some of them bitch and moan when a kid picks a school and they say, oh, they're buying them or whatever. It's NIL. But when their school gets a kid and NIL is involved, they don't say anything. Stop being a hypocrite. There are fans of every freaking school, any message board, any fan I talk to, email I get, bitching about this stuff. There are other people in the recruiting industry, one in particular I know pretty well, that bitches because he roots for a school and his school does the same thing. It's ridiculous. NIL is here to stay. You can like it. You can love it. You can hate it. You can have anywhere in between. It is not going anywhere. There are going to be changes to it. I'm not saying there isn't because all these states are arguing with each other. It is a political mess, literally, because people are trying to get votes. And I mean that literally by support. Hey, support this local school. We want our schools to get the NIL, all that. Look at the state of Missouri. Look that up right now, what they're trying to do. It's crazy. But at the same time, NIL is here to stay. Was it a part of his recruitment? I guarantee it. I know it's a factor for most 5-star recruits, but relationships are why Florida State and Miami have the best chance to eventually sign him, which, just for the record, December 20th is when a young man can sign his letter of intent this year. For the class of 24, the first signing day is going to be Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. Just wanted to say that. Want to make sure everybody is clear. NIL is out there, but relationships are the main theme here. So if you want to complain about why he picked, that's fine. Just don't think that Florida State's not a part of that too. Athletic Brewing Company. Now time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like an All-American quarterback, All-American Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They've got over 50 styles of beer. Craft, non-alcoholic, obviously, got IPAs, lagers, sours, goldens, etc. They're consistently releasing different kinds of beers and experimental styles just to give you a different option. If you want to try something different, this is a company that's pretty cool because they're creative and they don't just do like one thing. They give you a lot of different options. First-time customers can use Locked On to get 15% off your first online order. That's Locked On at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, a fit for all times. Now, segment 2 here. This is something that, to be honest with you, is just subjective, but it is based off intel. I haven't talked to Zaquan since his decision, but I know him well enough. It's not like he's my friend and I'm calling up and asking him where he's going this weekend for fun. But at the same time, I know him pretty well. Very educated kid, very articulate. And it's one of the reasons that myself, John Garcia, that used to be on the Locked On Network a lot, he's the recruiting analyst for Rivals in the Southeast region. He respects Zaquan as a player, as a person, as do I. The reason that Florida State will still go after him hard, it's about talent, man. It's about talent. He has that mentally and physically. Let's be clear. So they're going to push for him still. But with that point, I want to make a quick note to FSU fans. This is what Florida State currently possesses in their recruiting class. Currently. Seminoles, just at DB here. Seminoles commitments. First two are safeties from Georgia. KJ Bolden is from Buford, one of the top programs in the country. CJ Hurd is from Woodward Academy. They've been producing dudes forever. It's out of Atlanta. Ricky Knight, Cardinal Newman in South Florida. The Noles got him as second choice, ironically, the Miami Hurricanes. And then Charles Lester, one of the top corners in the country. He's out of Venice. He had offers across the board, Alabama included, who pushed for him. That's the four primary players. And there's a couple kids that are on the other side that could play DB technically. Danzy, etc. But with those four, they don't need to. If they are going to add a big-time player, that's great. But otherwise, somebody like Patterson, otherwise their DB board is pretty good. They had a big DB group last year. They just wanted to go with the elite kids this year, and they've hit the home run. Give Mike Norvell and his staff credit for what they've done. To even be in the race for Patterson after getting those four kids, pretty good. Pretty darn good. And they're still not done. Again, this is a long way from being over. This is what I expect. Over the next 2-3 weeks, there won't be much noise, but at some point he'll have to, because he still wants to take visits. At some point, he'll have to do that. I don't know if there's going to be more officials, unofficial, how it's going to work. The weeks they're going to be like on fall break. Is he going to take? I have zero clue. There's different ways guys do it, and his head coach will have to sit down and figure that out. But Chaminade-Madonna's schedule will play into it. When they play road games, it's harder. Maybe it's easier depending on where they are. But he's probably going to end up flying up to Tallahassee. I doubt he drives. It's just too far. From Broward County and seeing Florida State again. That's the crux of this. Florida State is going to get its shot during the season. Again, I have no idea which one, and I'm not sure Zaquan does either. I'll see him soon enough at a Chaminade game. I'll get into that. But I want to see at least a couple of things prior. There's an old saying in life, and you can directly apply this to recruiting. It's not what one says, it's what one does. Zaquan has been very consistent, whether it was me that was interviewing him, somebody from Rivals, 24/7, On3, another network, maybe even a local guy, maybe Larry Bluestein talking to him, whatever it may be. When he says something, he pretty much sticks to it. He's a straight shooter, a very blunt kid, a very forward personality. Nice guy, but he's blunt. He's made it very clear that Florida State is a program that he likes a lot and he's very interested in. And Florida State reciprocated by the way they recruited him so hard as a staff. I'm going to guess, just for fun here, that Zaquan will end up visiting Florida State before the end of October. I'm guessing that Damon, his head coach, is going to want him to be done if he can before playoffs. But he's a 17-year-old kid. He's going to do what's best for him. But to get into that pattern before playoffs kick off, need to be done before the end of October. That's, I'm sure, what they would like, but it may carry on to signing day. I have no idea. I just know that Florida State, in my opinion, from everything I was told leading up, they were the school, and then at the last minute, like even Miami thought he was going to Florida State. That's how close this was. Literally. They thought he was going to be a Florida State commitment. So you're going to see a push coming up. Right now, I don't know how much that matters. That's subjective on Norvell's part and his staff, but they're going to make another push at some point. Can we expect, shall we say, an easy flip? No, because Miami's going to recruit him hard too. That kid's been a priority for the Hurricanes for a long time. But this goes back 30 plus years when Bowden was battling for kids and trying to bring up the Florida State program at the same time that Miami was, early to mid 80s. They started button heads, Jimmy Johnson and Bowden, and then other coaches in Miami, etc. It's been going on a long time. This is another culmination of that. If you're going to get back to the top of college football, you have to find a way to win these battles. It'll still come back to relationships in one way, shape, or the other. But what can Florida State do that Miami doesn't do to get him to sign. That's really the only thing that matters. I'm not saying I know what it is. That's for Norvell. He makes a lot more money than I do. They got to figure that out, because this recruitment is going to be a microcosm of what's to come. Just to throw in a little something here, Florida State and Miami have changed the game in the state. Florida a little bit. I'm not taking anything away from Napier and his staff. They've just hit the home run more out of state than the other two right now. But long term, if any one of the big three are going to rise back into the college football playoff race, they got to keep more kids at home. The good news here overall is, like, to my knowledge, Florida State and Miami are the final two. Too many of the elite players have been leaving the state for a long time. It's around 40% of the players that are truly big time stay in state. That's horrendous. And I'm talking about Florida, Miami, Florida State, one of the three. That's not good enough. It used to be like 75% was a bad number. There were years it was 80% or more out of the top 25 kids went to one of the big three. So just a little side note there. Things are trending back in that direction. It's fascinating to me. So I'm very happy that his recruitment is at least close to done, because it's been hard to follow. He's been very open about allowing young men or allowing coaches to recruit him, but it looks like Florida State, Miami down the stretch. And of course that could still change, but I expect that to be the case. Unless something happens, it's going to be Florida State or Miami on December 20th. Now, as far as what else Florida State can do, I'm sure everybody will make their own opinions in the comments. Florida State beating Miami in the game, sure, that helps. No argument there, and vice versa. But Zaquan is going to make a decision for him. The game, it's not going to hurt when they play in Tallahassee. If I remember right, I think that's the 11th of November. That's when the game is. But at the same time, I don't think it's a huge deal. It's just kind of a bonus, but yeah, that's just my opinion on it. Real quick, thanks once again for making Locked On Seminoles your podcast each and every day. I really enjoy doing this podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's been a blast to prepare for them. I get to talk about recruiting. I love covering the states of Florida and Georgia in particular. I dip into Alabama a little bit once in a while, and Florida State recruits state of Alabama pretty good. They had a Heisman winner from Hueytown, Alabama, not all that long ago. And it's going well. I'm enjoying it. And thanks for leaving comments on YouTube, sending me emails. To that point, matter of fact, speaking of emails, if you want to send me a message on the show, there it is on YouTube. For those of you listening on Spotify or Apple or something else, you can send any questions or comments to Canes and Noles Rivalry at gmail.com. Again, that is Canes and Noles Rivalry at gmail.com. I'm happy to talk about whatever it is you want to do about a show. I've got a show coming up about power rankings and recruiting that somebody asked me to do. My friend Bud Elliott at 247 and CBS Sports has his power rankings based on recruiting. Somebody asked me to do a show in regards to what that's about. I've actually got something very relatable to Bud's commentary and his analysis that expands on that I'm working on, that I'll eventually get out later this fall. It's a lot of research, but one more time, that's Canes and Noles Rivalry at gmail.com. Happy to answer anything I can, whether it's Zaquan, something else, no problem for me. It's just a lot of fun talking recruiting and talking Noles. So that is that. Last thing here as we get ready to start segment 3. Gametime. This is one of the apps that I talked about briefly a little bit ago, but please make sure you understand this is a very easy app to use. I'm not the most patient guy, and it's something I've been on. Make sure that you check it out, because if you're like me and you've ever had a hard time getting tickets, maybe it's concert, maybe it's a play, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a football game, basketball game, whatever it is, you can do that. It's not easy to get tickets all the time, but find something for you that works easy. That's always a good thing. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer dealers on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So this last segment is what happens next. There are a couple of things here. I kind of went into it. He's going to take visits. So what am I talking about? That was a prelude to this. Recruiting is very, very much in flux with every program. It's not just the Noles, Miami, or whoever. It's everybody. Because of the portal and everything else, any of the following can happen. Number one, for whatever reason, Florida State could get a call from a kid that maybe they recruited 2 years ago. I don't know. And he's transferring out of school X. Apply it however you see fit. The transfer portal is a big part of recruiting now. Make no mistake. And maybe they're going to get a safety right after the year and they already know it. Can't announce it, whatever, but they know it. Maybe they don't go after Patterson. Maybe I'm shocked by that. But in today's college football recruiting landscape, I won't 100% alleviate that option. I would be shocked, but not going to alleviate it 100%. You could also have a situation where they go after him even harder because a player decommits. It doesn't even have to be a safety or DB. Florida State just might have another scholarship. Well, in that case, kind of like the NFL draft, best player available, baby. Let's go. Who's the best player? That's something you got to think about. Now, do I think that Florida State can finish in the top 5 of the recruiting rankings with him? Here's a little example how important this is. Not going to name which one or whatever, but I got a phone call from somebody talking about a recruit for a program and like where they were ranked, where they could be and all this, your projected rankings. They were just using 5 stars as an example. Okay. And Zaquan, like on Rivals, I mentioned he's number 14 overall, number 2 at safety, and number 4 overall in the state of Florida. I mean, he's a big time player. But if he commits to Florida State and flips over from Miami, you're talking about moving up a spot or 2 just with one player. Miami, Florida State, Auburn, figure out whatever program you want to talk about. If you're going to win titles, you need elite talent. That's why Bud Elliott talked about in that last segment. I was mentioning his recruiting index and the power recruit. I forget what it's called, but if you're not at least 50%, which Florida State's like right on the line, you're not sniffing the playoffs. You could bring back Vince Lombardi in his prime. You're not getting there. You're just not. Florida State needs to increase a little bit more for depth. Like this year's starting lineup, especially the way Norvell and his staff have hit the home run with the portal. I mean, they've done a better job, in my opinion, than any school in the country. And I talked about that recently. Really great job. Long term, and that's what recruiting is. It's the lifeblood of your program. You've got to get guys like Zaquan. And that is why what happens next is this, in my opinion, barring something unforeseen. And I did the preface with the comment about the transfer portal and all that first. They're going to go as hard for him now, if not harder than they ever have. They're aware of these statistics. They understand these statistics. They're not fools. Mike Norvell is not making millions of dollars because he's an idiot. You need elite talent. Elite players make plays in games that have zero to do with the people on the sidelines and headsets. Zero. Zaquan is one of those dudes. If you are going to find a way to get him back on campus, the only thing that I can say, and as I noted earlier, just make sure you've got a plan. What separates us? It's just like a business plan and trying to get a client to select your company over another. What makes Florida State different than Miami? That's what Auburn's staff is doing. That's what Ohio State staff is doing. That's what Jim Harbaugh's staff at Michigan is doing. What separates Florida State from Miami? Why come be a part of the climb? Why come be a part of the culture at Florida State instead of Miami? They got something in that realm. They make more money than I for a reason. They need to figure it out. What I expect is for Zaquan to announce on signing day to have another announcement. That's what I think is next in terms of the end game. He will take visits. It will be at least 2. I'm going to guess 3. I'm going to bet he visits, obviously, Miami, Florida State, and Auburn. Those are the 3 I think he'll visit. Michigan is iffy. The biggest guess I have with that is I don't have it in front of me, but even if I did, kids get wore out on these visits, especially during the season. They play a Friday night game. They got to get up early and fly, or they take a red eye. It sucks. It wears them out. Most kids really don't want to take 5. I doubt Zaquan will want to either. We'll see. But I think Auburn, Florida State, and Miami are the 3 most likely to get some type of visit in the fall. I'm not going to really go into depth with that any further, but that's what I expect. So last note here as I wrap up the show, thanks once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. It's free. You can also obviously get us on YouTube. If you're watching that, you know this. And if not, you can use YouTube. There are times that I'll have something on the screen. It's a little easier to use YouTube. And if you're on YouTube right now, I've got the Facebook page scrolling across the bottom. I just started it. I'm going to have a lot of information about recruiting. So whether you use the basic apps like Spotify or Apple or Amazon, whatever it is, if you want the real information, you have to go to the YouTube page sometimes for a little clip here or there. But the bigger thing is going to be on the Facebook page. I just started it, and I'll occasionally take a screenshot and post it to the Twitter handle. I've also got that. I'll put that up here briefly. But it's different. Oh, that's my Gmail, actually. It's different every day with what I learn with recruiting. And I can't do a full podcast on some of these snippets. So I'm just going to post them to the Facebook page. If you want to ask me something, if you want me to answer something on the Facebook page or on this podcast, Canes and Noles rivalry at gmail.com. Now, again, that is Canes and Noles rivalry at gmail.com. I'm going to be doing this every day in some capacity, talking about recruiting. It's what I love. I see no reason not to do it. And I hope you come along and join and enjoy in the fun. So with that, everybody have a great day. I appreciate it. It's going to be a fascinating week. Most of the rest of the week will be about the LSU and Florida State matchup. I'll have a little bit of recruiting too, but this is such a big game. Do note for you recruiting nuts, the Florida State LSU game needs its own attention. Probably Wednesday through Friday, that'll be the focus. Just my guess. So need to figure that out in length, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Wednesday through Friday, that'll be 90% about the game coming up for obvious reasons. So it's going to be fun. First game of the year for college football's Florida State Seminoles on September 3rd is coming up. So everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.